Hi, everybody. Welcome to our week 14. We only have 2 more weeks after this week. And I'll be posting a final into the Google Classroom for you to do. Hopefully you can have access to that. Some of you, I'm still missing some work from you. So perhaps it's because you are still working on it. Remember, you have till the 16th week. I need you to make sure you upload it. If you're having trouble, you can email me. You know my email is Dr. Christina Baker 111, there's 3 ones, at gmail.com. If you have a Gmail account, you should be able to access the Google Classroom. That's probably going to be your easiest bet to do. Today we're going to be talking about characteristics of capital market as well as the emerging market and property rights. Last week we briefly talked about property rights, so I'm going to go over that right now. So yeah, property rights is defined as a property of an income stream, and property right is a claim to a benefit stream that's legally conventionally enforceable and socially recognized by another who convert. Assumptions of microeconomics about property rights. Private property can be easily established and enforced. Transaction cost is zero. Distribution of income under a PPP is socially referred to. Complete property rights constitutes a foundation of microeconomic theory like production, consumption, exchange. PR is essential for voluntary exchange goods and services. In case of scarcity of goods and services, weak PR conflicts. Depending upon the nature of the right, property is classified into 4 categories: private, state, common, and open access. No body property. Economic development. Resources are more valuable, scarce. Environmental equity and distributive effect of prioritization. Commercial, sorry. Ruggables. Alternative resource management systems. Privatization means creating private property rights and access to common property and enforcing them. Privatization may be appropriate management system when the following conditions are met. Poor people, credit, new technology damaging power, open for all on equity basis, benefit and cost, government support, training, guidance, etc., resources easily divisible. Public management or nationalization experience are a mix of terms of success and failure. CPR management under following conditions. Over exploitation, degradation should be avoided. Resource national property not depleted. Investment technology required for conservation. Significant economies of scale. Government organization manage them, sensitive to local needs. Right. Collective management, management by local people, conditions, community users. CPR should be small, well-defined, harmonious, and self-governing. Set of rules, mutually accepted and enforced. Rules for equitable sharing benefits and cost. System of sanctions against violation of rules. Government resources are not degraded. Government helps funds technological information, training, etc. Supportive legal and political environment and equity. Private property regimes, ownership, individual companies, corporation, cooperative societies, privately owned cultivated land, products, crops, grasses, trees, fish ponds, tank, irrigation walls, etc. Rights to consumer use, exchange, transfer by sale or lease, property rights, voluntary exchange, and efficiency. Factors. Policies, laws, law enforcement mechanisms, conventions, and contracts for transactions. The context of agricultural land, loans from financial institution, long-term investment, increased use of purchase new form inputs. State property regimes. In the rights of property are vested in the state is known as state property. We have recessed forests, protected forests, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, national and state highway and railroad and minerals, oils, natural gas, rivers, lakes, etc. We have managed by state government, rules, regulations, nationalization, administrative structure to manage resources, factors interest to all people, ensure equity. We have sustainability in managing NR, investment funds, internalize the externalities. Common property regimes. Common property means a property owned in common by identifiable group of people, benefits commonly shared, social conventions, norms, legally enforceable rules, procedures for regulating its use, ecologically and socially sustainable resources. CPRs in India, common grazing land, revenue wasteland, village ponds and tanks, non-timber forests, products, etc. Classification of CPRs, semi-arid and zones, hills, forest to tribal area. CPRs are income-producing activities managing a watershed as common property and canal distribution of resource benefits, factors of over exploitation of the CPRs, loss of community control over the resource, communalization, rapid population growth, rapid technology change, open access regimes. Open access property is defined as nobody's property or property for which property rights are not defined. Free, unrestricted, no rules and regulation governing the use. Non-exclusive property, everyone's right property. Alternative resource management system, privatization, public management, collective management, tenures in national resources, effects on tenancy. Okay, that's the end of that. Oops. A little review on the foundations of macroeconomics. Looking at international trade. Looks frozen. Let me try it again. Oh, there it goes. Looks defective. Sorry about that, guys. There's a glitch in that one. I don't know why it's not working. All right, I'm not gonna blow it up because when I blow it up, it messes it up. So just have it small. Okay, so during the 6 months of NAFTA, only 5,000 workers applied for benefits under the scheme. During the first 6 months of NAFTA, only 5,000 workers applied for benefits. During the first 6 months, NAFTA, only 5,000 workers applied for benefits. Okay, in this checklist, we are explaining trade barriers to reduce the international trade. Explain the arguments used to justify trade barriers and show why they're incorrect, but also why some barriers are hard to remove. There's trade patterns and trends. Imports are the goods and services we buy from people in other countries. Trades and goods. 2006 trade goods accounted for outstanding trend. Some of the increase arises from offshore outsourcing. Buying a good or service from low-cost overseas supplier. Trading partners. Trade agreements. North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. Central American Free Trade Agreement, CAFTA. Asian Pacific Economic Corporation. Free Trade Area in Americas, FTAA. Balanced trade and international borrowing. Country has comparative advantage in the force that generates international trade. This is a graph showing you price in millions of dollars per airplane, no trade equilibrium. We see this in macro and microeconomics, the charting for economics. And then it shows you with no international trade. With no international trade, domestic purchases equals domestic production. U.S. price of an airplane is about 80 million. The U.S. aircraft makers produce 400 airplanes in a year. Trade. With international trade, the world market determines the world price of a plane of about 100 million. Domestic purchases increased to 300 airplanes. Domestic production increased for 800 airplanes. 500 airplanes are exported. Comparative advantage. The U.S. aircraft makers have a comparative advantage in producing airplanes. The world price line tells us the world opportunity cost producing airplanes is about 100 million. The U.S. supply curve shows about the U.S. opportunity cost producing an airplane is less than 100 million and airplanes up to the 800th one. Why United States exports t-shirts? Good question. More than half the clothing we buy is manufactured in other countries and exported in the United States. Why? The rest of the world, mainly Asia, has a comparative advantage in production of clothes because the opportunity cost of producing a t-shirt in Asia is less than the United States. No trade. With no international trade, domestic purchases equal a domestic production. The price of a t-shirt is $8. The U.S. t-shirt makers produce 20 million t-shirts in a year. Trade. With international trade, the world market determines the world price of a $5 a t-shirt. Domestic purchases increase 50 million t-shirts. Domestic production decreases to a zero. 15 million t-shirts are imported. Comparative advantage. Asian garment makers have a comparative advantage producing t-shirts. The world price line tells us the world opportunity cost of producing t-shirts is $5. The U.S. supply curve shows that no U.S. garment maker has such a low opportunity cost, not even a smaller output. Gains from trade in the PPF. We can use PPF to show the gains from international trade. Production possibilities in United States and China. Suppose the United States produces only two goods, airplanes and t-shirts. Suppose China produces the same goods. United States uses the resources to produce airplanes. They outsource of 10 airplanes a year and no t-shirts. If the United States uses all the resources to produce t-shirts, its output is 100 million t-shirts and no airplanes. Assume the U.S. opportunity cost of producing an airplane is consistent. The U.S. opportunity cost producing one airplane is about 10 million t-shirts. If U.S. uses all its resources to make airplanes, China can produce about 2 airplanes a year and no t-shirts. If China uses all the resources to produce t-shirts, China can produce about 100 million t-shirts and no airplanes. Assume China's opportunity cost of producing an airplane is consistent. China's opportunity cost of producing one airplane is about 50 million t-shirts. Here it shows you the US PPF. With no international trade, the United States produces at point A, along with US at PPF. The outsourcing cost of producing an airplane is consistent. The opportunity cost of producing an airplane in the United States is about 10 million t-shirts. Here's showing you China's PPF. With no international trade, the China produces point B. The opportunity cost produces an airplane in China about 50 million t-shirts. No trade. With no international trade, United States produces 5 airplanes and 50 million t-shirts at point A and PPF. China produces about 2 airplanes and no t-shirts at point B on PPF. With no trade, total production is about 7 airplanes and 50 million t-shirts. Comparative advantage, China has a comparative advantage in producing t-shirts. China's opportunity and cost of t-shirts is 1 in 50,000 or 50 million on an airplane. The US opportunity cost of a t-shirt is 1 in 10 million an airplane. China's opportunity cost of a t-shirt is less than the US opportunity cost of a t-shirt, so China has a comparative advantage in producing t-shirts. The United States has a comparative advantage in producing airplanes. US opportunity cost in producing an airplane is about 10 million t-shirts. China's opportunity cost of producing an airplane is 50 million t-shirts. The US opportunity cost of an airplane is less than China's opportunity cost of an airplane, so the United States has a comparative advantage in producing airplanes. The gains available from trade. If the United States, which has a comparative advantage in producing airplanes, allocates all the resources of producing airplanes, it can produce about 10 airplanes a year. And China, which has comparative advantages in producing t-shirts, allocates all of the resources to producing t-shirts. China can produce about 10 million t-shirts a year. With no trade, total production is about 7 airplanes and 50 million t-shirts. By specializing in production, total production is about 10 airplanes and 100 million t-shirts. Total production increases by 3 airplanes and 50 million t-shirts a year. But the increase in production is the gains available from trade. But to reap these gains, the United States and China must trade. Achieving gains from trade. The United States and China will reap the gains of international trade. If a country specializes in producing a good, which comparative advantage, then the two countries trade with each other. Here shows gain from trade. The United States specializes by producing 10 airplanes at point B on the PPF. China specializes by producing 100 million t-shirts at point Q and the PPF. If t-shirts and airplanes are traded at 20 million t-shirts per airplane, China can consume B and the United States consumes at point A. Both countries consume outside their PPFs. Both countries gain from the trade. Offshore and outsourcing. A firm in the United States can obtain things that are sales in many 4 ways. Hire U.S. labor and produce in the United States. Hire foreign labor and produce in other countries. Buy finished goods, components, and services from other firms in the United States. Buy finished goods, components, and services from firms in other countries. You have outsourcing occurs when a firm buys finished goods, components, or services from other firms. Outsourcing occurs when the U.S. firm either is producing in another country or outsourcing to a firm in another country. Activities 3 and 4 are outsourcing. Activities 2 and 4 are offshoring. Why did offshoring of services boom during the 1990s? A dramatic fall in the cost of telecommunications generated the offshoring boom in the 1900s. The gains from specialization and trade must be large enough to make it worth the accruing cost of communication transportation. Until the 1990s, costs were too high to make offshoring of services efficient. What are benefits of outsourcing or offshoring? Offshoring brings gains of the trade. They're identical to those of another type of trade. Why is the offshoring a concern? Many people believe that offshoring brings cost, especially in terms of slowdown of jobs growth, outweigh the benefits. Increase in U.S. imports faster than U.S. exports. Winners and losers. Gains from the trade don't benefit every individual. Americans on the average gain from offshoring, but some lose. The losers are the ones who invested in the human capital to do a specific job when it's gone offshore. Governments restrict trade to protect industries from foreign competition by using two main tools: tariffs, non-tariff barriers. And a tariff, remember, is a tax on a good that's imposed by the importing country when imported good across the international border. A non-tariff barrier is any action that a tariff that restricts international trade. For example, a quota. Here shows the effects of a tariff. Price of a t-shirt is $5. With free international trade, Americans can buy 50 million t-shirts a year. The United States produces no t-shirts, so 50 million t-shirts are imported. Suppose the United States put a tariff on imported t-shirts. With a tariff, the domestic price equals, so the world price plus the tariff. So 50% tariff on t-shirts, the price in the United States rises from $5 to $7.50. Americans buy 25 million t-shirts a year. The U.S. garment makers produce about 10 million t-shirts a year. Imports shrink about 15 million t-shirts a year, and government collects tariff revenue purple area. Rise in the price of a t-shirt. The price of a t-shirt rises by 50% from $5 to $7.50 a shirt. Decrease in purchases. Quantity brought decrease from 50 million to 25 million t-shirts a year. Increase in domestic production. The higher price stimulates domestic production, which increased from 0 to 10 million t-shirts a year. Decrease in imports. The quality imported from 50 million to 15 million t-shirts a year, a decrease from 35 million t-shirts. Tariff revenue. The government collects tariff revenue for $3 to $50 per t-shirt. In 15 million t-shirts imported, a tariff revenue is $37.5 million a year. U.S. consumers lose. The opportunity cost of a t-shirt is $5, but the Americans pay $7.50 a t-shirt, $2.50 more than the opportunity cost of a t-shirt. The U.S. consumers are willing to buy 50 million t-shirts a year at the opportunity cost. So a tariff deprives people of t-shirts they are willing to buy at an equal price opportunity cost. Non-tariff barriers. Quota. A specified maximum amount of good that may be imported in a given period of time. How quota works. Free trade. Americans pay $5 a t-shirt and export or import 50 million t-shirts a year. Suppose the U.S. government sets a quota on imported t-shirts at 15 million a year. It shows the effects of a quota here. With free trade, the domestic price equals the domestic price. There is no domestic production, and imports are about 50 million shirts a year. With a quota, domestic supply is about S plus quota. The price of Americans pay is determined in the U.S. market and rises to $7.50 a t-shirt. Americans buy 25 million t-shirts a year. With the higher price, the U.S. garment makers increase production to 10 million t-shirts a year. The U.S. imports decrease from 50 million to 15 million t-shirts, which equals the quota. Health, safety, and other non-tariff barriers. Thousands of detailed health, safety, and other regulations restrict international trade. Some examples are food imports in the United States. They must meet Food and Drug Administration standards. Europe bans import of genetically modified foods like U.S. soybean and Canadian granola. And the Australia bans imports of California grapes to protect the grapes from a virus in California. Isn't that interesting? Europe bans our GMO food of U.S. soybean and Canadian granola. And then the Australia bans the California grapes because we have a virus in our grapes. 3 arguments for protection. That makes you sad, right? That they don't like our GMO food and our grapes. National security argument, the infant industry argument, the dumping argument, national security argument, the argument that the countries protect industries that produce equipment and armaments, and those on the defense industries rely on raw materials. Uh-oh. Hold on, my screen got paused. There we go. The argument can be taken too far. In a time of war, all industries contribute to the national defense. The increase of output in strategic industry is more efficient than the use of subsidiary rather than a tariff or quota. The infant industry argument is necessary to protect the new industry to enable the growth into more mature industry that can compete in the world markets. Valid only if benefits of learning by doing are not only accrue the owners of the workers and the firms in the infant industry, but also spill over in other industries and parts of the economy. Dumping argument. Dumping occurs when a foreign firm sells its exports at a lower price than the cost of production. Argument is that the firm that wants to become a global monopoly might try to eliminate its foreign competitors by dumping. Once a global monopoly, it will raise its price. Dumping is virtually or usually justification for temporary countervailing duties. 5 new arguments of protection. Saves jobs. The argument is that protection saves jobs because we buy shoes from Brazil or t-shirts from Taiwan, and the U.S. workers lose their jobs. Allows us to compete with the cheap foreign labor. The argument is that the removal of protective tariffs in the U.S. trade with Mexico jobs rushing to Mexico would make a giant sucking sound. And it brings diversity and stability. An argument is that protection brings a diversified economy, an economy that fluctuates less than one of the producers, only a few goods and services. Penalizes the lax environmental standards. The argument is that poor countries such as Mexico do not have the same environmental standards as the United States, so we cannot compete without the tariffs. Protects national culture. The argument is that's commonly heard in Canada and Europe is free trade in books, magazines, movies, and television programs means U.S. domination and the end of local culture. One of the 5 common arguments provides overwhelming support for protection. Why is international trade restricted? 2 reasons. Tariff revenue, rent seeking, and tariff revenue. In some developing countries, governments cannot use the income taxes and sales taxes because the financial record keeping is poor. In these countries, international trade transactions are well reported, so governments use tariffs on imports to raise revenue. Rent seeking is lobbying and other political activity that seek to capture the gains from trade. Free trade increases consumption possibilities and average, but not everyone shares the gains. Free trade brings benefits to some and costs to others. The uneven distribution of benefits and costs is a principal source of impediment to freer international trade. We have compensating losers in the total. The gains from free international trade exceeded the losses, so why don't the people who gain from free trade compensate the losers? Good question. To a degree, losers are compensated. When Congress approved the NAFTA deal with Canada and Mexico, it set up $56 billion funds to support and retrain workers who lost their jobs because of the free trade agreement. During the first 6 months of NAFTA, only 5,000 workers applied for benefits under the scheme. It's difficult to identify and compensate the losers from a free trade. But if we don't make a better effort, protectionism will remain such a popular and permanent feature in international economic and political life. And good facts there. Okay, our last PowerPoint to review. Going over international management. Okay, the nature of international management is assessing the international environment, gauging strategic issues, organizing international business, adapting to cultural differences, social responsibility, and ethical issues. We have the nature of international management, international business, profit-related activities conducted across international boundaries, international management, processes of planning, leading, organizing, controlling, organizations engaged in international business. Nature of international management, organizations engaging in international management, multinational corporation. We have organizations engaging in international management may vary in size and extend their business activities across international boundaries. Nature of international management, orientation toward international management, ethnocentric, polycentric, regiocentric, and genocentric. Ethnocentric home country orientation, polycentric host country orientation, regocentric regional orientation, geocentric world orientation. Assessing international environment, we have environmental elements, economic, legal, political, social, cultural, technological. We have competitive advantage of nations, concept that the environmental elements within a nation can foster innovation in certain industries, thereby increasing the prospects of the success of the home-based companies operating internationally. We have economic element, developed countries, less developed countries, the LCDs, newly industrialized countries, infrastructure, balance of payments, balance of trade, exchange rate. We have political risk, legal political element, exploration, indigenation laws, tariffs, import quotas, administrative protections. We have cultural differences, we have individualism versus collectivism, power distance, achieving, nurturing, orientation, short-term orientation, long-term orientation, and technological transfer. There's gauging strategic issues here. We have methods of international entry, exporting, licensing, strategic allowances. We have wholly owned subsidiaries, multinational corporation strategies, worldwide integration, national responsiveness, regional responsiveness, and multifocal emphasis. We have methods of international entry, exporting, licensing, strategic alliance, and wholly owned subsidiary. Methods of international entry, globalization, national responsiveness, regional responsiveness, and multifaceted emphasis. Organizing international business, we have worldwide functional divisions, worldwide product divisions, international divisions, geographic regions, global matrix, network structure. We have assignment policies, reparation, managing international human resources, recruitment, selection training, adjusting leadership styles. Questionable payment issues. We have political payments, bribes, extortion, sales commissions, expedient payments, and we have this under the international social responsibility. And in conclusion, the nature of international management, we have orientations, ethnocentric, polycentric, and genocentric, and regiocentric that make a difference. We have assessing the international environment, environmental elements, competitive advantage in nations, gauging strategic issues, and methods of international entry, multinational strategies. Organizing international business, divisions, functional, product, international, global matrix, and network structure, adapting to cultural differences, international human resources, adjusting leadership style, social responsibility, ethical issues, and international social responsibility and questionable payments. All right, that concludes today. Thank you so much, everybody. And don't forget to upload all your assignments. And like I said, we have 2 more weeks left. So that means I'm going to be posting your final test later this week, and you have 2 weeks to do it. And don't forget to be turning in your summaries from every day's lecture. If for some reason you missed some, you can always go back. They're there on the thread on the Google Classroom. All right, thanks so much, everybody. See you next time. Bye. Bye, everybody.